Well, happy Monday, friends. It's another Monday. Can you believe it? They just seem to keep coming on the calendar. You go from one to the next. Time keeps moving on. You can't slow it down. Believe me, I know. By the way, let me say this to all of you. A few weeks back, all the happy birthday wishes, thank you so much. I even mentioned on one of our ADW gatherings here about a chia pet. And guess what? After church on a Sunday morning, somebody walked up to me with a little sheep chia pet. Thank you. Somebody else gave me a loaf of bread. I mean, I just feel blessed. Thank you so much for your cards and letters and your encouragement on my birthday. You guys are too much. Thank you. Well, today on this beautiful Monday morning, we pick up where we left off in the Gospel of Mark, still in the 6th chapter. Quite a long chapter, and there's a lot of incredible things that happen. Now, when we last left our disciples and Jesus together, you remember what had happened? They fed 5,000 people. Well, the disciples didn't so much. Jesus did. It was a miracle. The bread of life, Jesus Christ, provides in such a miraculous way. The people were astonished. In fact, the Gospels collectively that all record the feeding of the 5,000, at that moment when that miracle took place, they wanted to make Jesus their king by force. And you can understand why. I mean, they were looking for a prophet who was like Moses. And what was similar about Jesus and Moses? Well, when Moses was in the wilderness with the nation of Israel, you remember what happened? Bread was multiplied daily. So the people are thinking, this has got to be the guy that Moses referred to. And besides, we got free lunch. Let's make him our king. Well, the disciples, I'm sure, were pretty excited about that opportunity. But I want you to see what happens here in Mark chapter 6 and verse 45. Immediately, there that word is again, immediately, he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side to Bethsaida, while he sent the multitude away. Interesting. I mean, the disciples are probably thinking, Lord, they're going to make you king. That would make us, this is exciting. Jesus said, get in the boat, boys. Get in the boat. Go to the other side. But what about just go? Get in the boat. He made them get into the boat, and then he told the people, dismissed the people personally. And after he had dismissed the disciples and dismissed the crowds, notice what happened next. Verse 46, and when he had sent them away, he departed to a mountain to pray. Isn't it interesting? After ministering in the midst of being tired and exhausted and just being poured out, when it was all said and done, and when Jesus was once again alone, you know what his first course of action was? To pray. Just to be still, to commune with his Father, and just to be alone in solitude. You know, sometimes that's the best way to be refreshed, to be renewed, just to get alone, to get quiet, and just be still, seek the Lord, and pray. Well, while Jesus was up on the mountain praying, the disciples were in the midst of the sea, and they were having some trouble. For the Bible records for us here in verse 47, now when evening came, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land. Verse 48, then he, that is Jesus, saw them straining at rowing, for the wind was against them. Now about the 4th watch of the night, he came to them, walking on the sea, and would have passed them by. Jesus is up on the mountain praying. The disciples are in the midst of the Sea of Galilee, struggling. A wind quickly, and it can happen, comes over the mountains into Galilee, and it can be rather dangerous if you're on the sea in those moments, even to this day. And they're straining, and they're going against the wind. Why? Why not just turn the boat around and come back? Because Jesus told them to go to the other side. This storm that the disciples were in, this is not a storm of correction. They were actually being obedient to the Lord. They were going to the other side, and they're straining. And what's amazing to me is Jesus watched them strain. He observed it. And it wasn't until the 4th watch of the night, which is somewhere around 3 a.m. How long did he let them battle the wind and waves? We don't know. but he allowed it to go on for some time. And then he came walking to them in the midst of the sea. And it says he was just going to walk right past them. Again, this is a miracle. These men grew up on the Sea of Galilee, and here comes somebody walking on the water. Notice what it says, verse 49, and when they saw him walking on the sea, they supposed it was a ghost, and they cried out. And they all saw him, and they were troubled. But immediately he talked with them and said to them, "Be of good cheer. It is I. Do not be afraid." I mean, what kind of a miracle is this? I mean, there's a storm, wind is blowing, and there's this guy walking on the water. It's a ghost. I mean, all the disciples are freaked out. That's putting it mildly. But in the midst of their fear, they're drenched, they're scared, they think they're going under. Jesus speaks, and oh, how I love his words. Be of good cheer. It's me. Don't be afraid. And then he went up into the boat to them, and the wind ceased. And they were greatly amazed in themselves beyond measure and marveled. For they had not understood about the loaves because their heart was hardened. Interesting. They're in the midst of the storm. And in the midst of the storm, Jesus shows up, and they didn't recognize that it was Jesus. Friend, listen, you may be in a storm today, and not because it's a storm of correction or that you're living disobediently, because God will send storms when you're running away from him. Just ask Jonah. He'll tell you in the scriptures. But this was walking in obedience to the Lord, and they were in the midst of a storm. And yet Jesus showed up, and they didn't know it was Jesus. And I found, and maybe you found this to be true too, sometimes the Lord allows us to go through a storm. And Jesus shows up in ways that we don't recognize. He shows up through a friend with a word of encouragement. He shows up through a provision that you didn't know was coming. And it just, the Lord's showing up in different ways, and we're not really recognizing it. And he's speaking and saying, hey, listen, be of good cheer. It's me. You don't need to be afraid. I'm right here. And isn't it amazing when Jesus gets into the boat, everything changes. Maybe you're in a storm. Maybe waves are coming in and you think this is it, we're going under. No. Be of good cheer. It's the Lord. You don't have to be afraid. Allow him to come into that boat. He will calm the storm. He'll be with you in the storm, but he can also calm the storm. And I want to say this to you. You're going to get to the other side. The disciples got to the other side. You're going to make it too. You're not going under. The Lord didn't call you into this to just let you drown. He's for you and not against you. So keep rowing, keep trusting. He's with you. God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow.